Speak up.
الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور انفسنا ومن سيئات اعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له واشهد ان لا اله الا الله وحده لا شريك له واشهد ان محمدا عبده ورسوله. So does anybody remember what the last discussion was about? Well, last week was IW, so we did not do a discussion. But before that, we had discussions from Brother Yunus. I think it was you. And you know what was discussed? Another Brother, yeah.
More on the battle.
Yeah, like what was the extension of battle?
That is all over the place.
So there's another significant battle that happened at this time in the Seerah that we're going to discuss. And anybody know what it is? Yeah. Battle of Uhud. It's named that because there's like a mountain range right next to Medina called Uhud. Good job. So that's what we're going to talk about now. The thing about Battle of Badr is what? It was impromptu war. It was something that just happened like this. You know, the caravan was captured. It was all impromptu, very quick. Battle of Uhud, however, was not impromptu. It was something planned. It was premeditated. And who did it? Who premeditated it? Quraysh. It was the Quraysh. They're the ones who attacked us. So we were out in Medina, the Muslims. Quraysh came from Mecca, and they're like, okay, we need to plan an attack. They're pissed off because what happened in Badr. We won Badr. Despite being outnumbered, we still won in the Battle of Badr. So Quraysh is now saying, okay, we need to get revenge. We're kind of pissed off. We need to destroy these Muslims. We need to kill them. And so how do we do that? So first of all, there was a caravan from the previous year, and a lot of traders and stuff, basically, they had certain amounts of money. So essentially what happened is Abu Sufyan, basically, he took two of the biggest names of the tribe, and he had them approach every single house of the Quraysh, asking for money, especially the ones like they know how much money they had from the caravans. So they asked, approaching for money. I want some money. I want some money because we need to build an army. We need to go and attack the Muslimin in Medina. So they got a lot of money. They arranged it, and of course, something that we know in Islam and even in Surah Al-Anfal, we know surely the disbelievers spend their wealth to hinder others from the path of Allah, and they will continue to spend to the point of regret. Then they will be defeated, and the disbelievers will be driven into hell. This is what? This is something that Allah is referencing to them trying to gather money because of they want to attack Muslims in Medina after Badr. So what happened is they collected the money. They went to Medina. But first, I want to mention three things. They had three main motives. Okay, and if you think, you can probably figure out what these motives are. But does anybody have a guess of what the motives for this attack was?
Stop the political power of the Muslims.
Kind of, yeah. Money? Oh, not really, but kind of. Not really. Okay. Maybe? No? Alright. Well, there's three main causes. We're going to talk about them now. Number one is religious animosity towards Islam, and that was increasing, right? There's a lot of people, especially non-Muslims, who hate Muslims. They hate us. I'll even give an example. Last night I was going to ICSD, and I was driving by this truck that drove by, and it was saying, just making gibberish noises to make fun of the Muslims. These people hate Muslimin, they hate Islam. Despite whether they know it's the truth or not, they have a deep hatred for us. So this is one of the reasons they had it. They just hated Muslims. They hated that it was spreading. They hated that Islam was becoming a big thing. So that's one of the reasons for wanting to attack us. That's something that drove them to do it. Second of all, they suffered socially and were desperate to save face. Right? They wanted revenge. They literally just got destroyed at Battle of Badr, in which they had more people than us. We were outnumbered. We still beat them. So they wanted to save face. They were like, okay, we look really bad. We gotta show how strong we are. And the third one, Zaid, you kind of covered it. You said money. There was a trade route to Syria that was, of course, after the Battle of Badr, they couldn't just go in and out, right? So the Quraysh they wanted to go back to their pre-Islamic norms. They wanted to be like, hey, we want to have this trade route to Syria. We want to have it back. We want to have our economy popping again. And we want the Quraysh to be just like it was before Islam was a thing. We want to go back to those times. And something to know is the Quraysh were not the only people affected by this Syria trade route business, right? So they want the common enemies. They went to neighboring tribes who would equally benefit from the reopening of the Syrian trade route. Kinana and Tihan. Those were the two tribes that wanted to help Quraysh. So something to note is Battle of Uhud is not just Quraysh versus the Muslims, or the Quraysh at least versus the Quraysh versus the Muslims. It's also Islam versus Kufr. Because we're not just having the Quraysh attacking us. We have Muslims in Medina being attacked by not just Quraysh, but non-believers, kuffar, idol worshippers. we have multiple tribes now coming against us. And like I said, we have multiple tribes. How many do we have? 3,000. So there's 3,000 troops from multiple tribes coming to attack who? The Muslims. Now, this is something already like crazy, right? There's 3,000 fighting men, 700 with armor, and 200 on horseback. And this by itself is crazy. And they even brought 2,000 women to incentivize their soldiers, as it says in the book. So they really went all out. They had a lot of money. They had a lot of soldiers, a lot of power. They have a lot of armor, horses, everything. So they took off. They left from where they are on their way to Medina. So then Quraysh left. As soon as it happened, we have Abbas, who's a trusted servant to the Prophet ﷺ. He was like, okay, I have to warn the Prophet now. I need to warn Rasulullah about what is going on in this attack, right? We have these people marching from the Quraysh. They're going to march to Medina to attack whom? The Muslims. So we need to go warn them. We need to make sure that the Prophet ﷺ knows that he is about to get attacked and ambushed by the Quraysh and these other kuffar tribes. So Al-Abbas does what? He expresses iman to the Prophet ﷺ after Badr already. So what he did is he sent a messenger to Medina to go warn the Prophet. And this messenger, he went by himself. He was all alone. He just marched on straight to Medina until what happened? He got there 2 days before Quraysh was there. So now we have a kind of a small advantage, right? Now we know what's going to happen. We know there's an attack that is incoming. We know that Quraysh is about to come 2 days before it happens. Now, what would you do in this if you're in the shoes, Yunus? What would you do?
Start getting ready to fight back.
You start like preparing things, right? You start getting armored, doing, yeah. What about you, Zaid? Same thing? Same thing? Now, here comes the hikmah. Here comes the wisdom of the Prophet. He's not a rash decision maker. Because I hear something like this, okay, you have all these people coming to attack us. I'm going to try to go quick. Okay, I need to take care of this. I need to make sure that it's not a problem. I need to, get people, whatever. He is wise. He is smart, and he was not hasty. So what did he do? He consulted first of all, right? He consulted with different people and sent out some spies to confirm the news. So first one, he wanted to confirm that this is actually happening. He trusted Abbas. Of course, he wants to also trust to make sure confirmation that this is actually happening, not fake news. The next thing he did, he had 2 days to act. So he had a general meeting after Friday prayer, Salat al-Jum'ah. He had a little general meeting informing everyone what's about to happen. Because after he confirmed it from the spies, okay, these people are going to attack us. We want everyone in the community to know and get their input. What do we do? How do we handle this? Because community is one of the most important things when it comes to battle and wars, right? You cannot have a divided army, right? Even the non-Muslims in America, they say this. It's like a tribe divided amongst itself, something like that. You cannot be divided. We have to all have common ground. So all the people were informed about this attack, and their input was asked. The Prophet he suggested that they fight within the city, right? Because Medina was naturally protected, right? From the east to the west, they had large volcanic plains. If you go to Medina, you'll see these mountains. You have these big volcanic plains. Northwest, there's the plains of Uhud, which is like the mountain range we were discussing. And then in the southeast, we have the area of Quba, which is, we have the Masjid al Quba in Medina. It's an area. So naturally, it's pretty protected. It's hard to attack Medina. So fighting within the city would give like an advantage because, okay, it's kind of protected on these different angles. People can't just rush in and attack the Muslims like this. But then, and even Abdullah ibn Ubay ibn Sahud said, he agreed with the Prophet. And even though he was a seasoned warrior and all this stuff, he understood the benefits of the plan. So he even said, Medina has never been successfully attacked when fought within. So this is the original plan that the Prophet came up with. Okay, we go and fight in Medina. This is our home, our territory. We know how it's naturally protected, so this is where we're going to fight. Eventually, what happened is some of the youth, right, younger, jealous companions, they were more eager to fight, and they said, "Okay, why should we remain in our houses like cowards, right? Why don't we just stay here and wait in Medina like cowards? Why don't we go and fight on the battlefield?" And because a lot of these guys are young, right? So they did not participate in the Battle of Badr. So they kind of regret it, right? They're like, we wish we could have fought on Badr. We wish we could have done these things. So why don't we just go and fight? Why don't we just stay here waiting like cowards? Is what they said. So they tried to encourage and push the Prophet to go out. And the senior companions, they stayed silent. And then the Prophet left. He sided with majority vote. He said, "Okay, since most of you guys think we should go and fight out of Medina, we'll do that." He left, and then the older companions were like, "No, you shouldn't do that. You shouldn't try to push the Prophet into doing something," because they were pushing him. And then they went back to the Prophet, and because after the older people said, the Prophet told us his opinion, and he persisted in suggesting the opposite until he finally agreed. So yeah, they felt remorseful, the young people, and they requested that Hamza would go to the Prophet and say that we changed our mind. But then the Prophet said, he was already dressed in full armor. He said, it is not befitting that a Prophet takes off his armor after wearing it until he fights the enemy. So see the bravery and see like the manliness and like just perfection right here. He put on the armor and he's saying, I'm not going to take this off until I fight the enemy. I'm not going to take it off. That's something that, first of all, I don't know if any of us could do something like that. It's very brave. But it shows also that he was insisting on consulting the companions, and he was confident in the plan to remain in Medina. And he still wanted the majority, even though his original plan was fighting in Medina. He listened to the majority. Why? Because a nation divided amongst itself, right? We said how the Muslims believe. This is something that's true, in that the Muslims cannot be divided. So as long as we all have a plan and we all agree on said plan, this is something that we should all follow. It'll make us stronger in terms of fighting our enemy. So they follow this plan, and now they march to Uhud, right? So now we finish the preparation. This is the prologue, whatever it's called. We're now going to the actual battle of Uhud, right? So they start marching, and on the way, does anybody know about anything that happened on the way to the battle from the Muslim side? Anything that happened within us? There's one specific thing that happened. It was actually mentioned. It was referenced in the Quran.
The hypocrites.
The hypocrites.
Of the life, right?
So we'll get to this. Hypocrites. So we have three big groups on the way to Medina from the Muslims, on the way to Uhud from Medina, from the Muslims, right? We have 1,000 people that are Muslims, right? I told you guys it was 3,000 of the kuffar that are attacking us, and we are 1,000 Muslims, right? And we have 100 suits of armor, and we just have a handful of horses, just a few horses from here. So obviously, open battle against the enemy. If we just go in the field and 1,000 versus 3,000, like they have video games, we can do that. What do you think is going to happen? Well, and it's not, the odds are against us, but we have this advantage in that we're from Medina, right? We know the area, we know the mountains. So of course they go and navigate to the mountains of Uhud. Okay. So on the way to Uhud, because that's where we're going now, we're going into the mountains. A group of 300 hypocrites, headed by Abdullah ibn Ubay ibn Salul, began lagging behind gradually, and then they eventually took a complete U-turn. So basically, a third of the army that were Muslims, we already outnumbered by 3x, right? 1,000 Muslims versus 3,000 kuffar. Now we're outnumbered already. Now 300 of the people that are Muslims, so now we're 700. Basically says, okay, we're just going to take a U-turn. We're leaving. We're not going to help. We're not going to fight these non-Muslims. They're what? Hypocrites. Right? It's actually mentioned in the Quran what they did. I can find the verse. I'm not sure if I have it written down here. But we'll get to that. They tried to sneak away, right? They didn't have the decency to even tell people. They didn't say, okay, you know what? We're not going to be able to do this. They just snuck away, basically. And some of the companions saw them like sneaking away and said, like they rebuked them, right? And of course, Abdullah said, look, he listened to our youth and left my advice. Why would we risk our lives fighting for him when he did not listen to us? And of course, he was reminded that one of the Sahaba, I remind you to fear Allah and not leave your Prophet and people at this time when the enemy is about to attack. Did you not promise him that you would protect him and defend him like you would your own families? And it's also, he was reminded that it's your religious duty, right? As well as your tribal honor. Abdullah ibn Away, he meekly responded, right? He just said, look, if we thought they would be fighting, we would have definitely gone with you, but we do not think that they will attack. So now they're trying to justify it by saying, look, okay, we're not going to help. We're leaving. We're taking that U-turn. We're not going to help fight. But honestly, if we actually thought they were going to fight, we definitely would have fought. We would have went with them and fought. And like I said, this was quoted in the Quran directly, right? We have it saying, so what in the Quran, right? It says, so what you suffered on the day the two armies met was by Allah's will, so that He may distinguish the true believers and expose the hypocrites. When it was said to them, come fight in the cause of Allah, or at least defend yourselves, they replied, if we had known there was fighting, we would have definitely gone with you. So they were closer to disbelief than belief on that day, for saying with their mouths what was not in their hearts. Allah is all knowing of what they hide. So they're basically being called out in the Quran, right? They're actually hypocrites. A third of us, our army is already outnumbered by 3x. Now a third of that, of our 1,000 people, are also leaving, and they did not say what was in their hearts. They did not reflect on what they were actually feeling, right? And this is actually a general lesson to learn as Muslims: is you should not say something if you're not going to meet it, right? If your friend asks you, can you come to this event on Saturday? Don't tell them, all right, I'll be there. If you're in your heart, you're thinking, there's no way I'm going to this. I'm going to be traveling. I'm not going to be in town. No, don't say what is not true, right? Say what your heart says. This is literally what these guys did, right? They're saying they're going to help, but in their heart, they're actually not like they're not doing it. They're not man enough to help or whatever. They're not like they're hypocrites. They betrayed. So of course, this is something we have to keep in remembrance as a Muslimin is that don't say something if you're not going to follow up with it. If you don't feel something, just to be nice, don't even do it. If my friend tells me on Saturday I have this event, and I know I'm going to be in LA or something on Saturday, I'm just going to tell them, no, I'm not going to your event. I'll say it in a nice way, yeah, but I'm not going to tell them, sure, maybe I'll go. Even the word maybe, this is something that's honest because you know as a fact that you're not going. So it's just a small little snippet lesson from this what's going on in the Seerah. We'll continue, yeah. So let me see, we're doing on time. Okay. All right. So, anyways, Allah described what's going on here as the situation as separating the evil from the good, right? And of course, the only way to distinguish the sincere from the disingenuous is through trying times, right? Especially like if you have non-Muslim friends, you can see in trying times you can see what they're supporting, what they're not supporting, right? Like if they're supporting genocide, trying times, these times that they're not someone you want to be friends with. So, trying times, that's when you see at the end of the day what a person really boils down to. And these 300 people, we saw what they boiled down to this trying time. Not good, hypocrites. So we'll go on. Of course, when the Muslims saw a large group of people going back, they started debating, right? Some of them are like, all right, what do we do? Some of them said, hey, why don't we all group up and attack them? They're like, I mean, this is trying time, right? So like why don't we fight the defectors? Another group is saying we continue forward. And then through this, even though this argument was for the sake of Islam, Allah gently reprimanded them, saying, why are you believers divided into two groups regarding the hypocrites, while Allah allowed them to regress to disbelief because of their misdeeds? Do you wish to guide those left by Allah to stray? And whoever Allah leaves to stray, you will never find for them a way. So even if you go try to chase through these people and try to guide them, if Allah wants them to be astray, there's no way. They will never be guided. Allah doesn't want it. Everything is from Allah, right? So of course, another consequence of this withdrawal of the people is a lot of the auxiliary tribes started to falter, right? They started like hesitating what the position was and all that, and eventually, Allah references them too, right? When two groups among you were about to cower, but Allah was their ally. So in Allah, let the believers put their trust. So, anyways, essentially, this is talking about is we had two tribes. We have the Banu Haritha from the Us, and we had Banu Salama from the Khazraj, right? They almost withdrew, but they decided to stay. Allah basically said, Allah, two groups among you were about to cower, and Allah was their ally. So, funny enough, later on, these people would use that as like, that's actually, look, Allah called us our ally, that's actually a good thing. So, but of course, imagine yourself, you're about to cower, you're about to be fearful and all this, and Allah is reassuring, look, Allah is your ally. How could you be scared, right? That's something to also acknowledge. So now we're how many Muslims? How many Muslims are there now after 300 left? 700, right? So basically we have what? 700 versus 3,000 kuffar. And a lot of them are really armed and they have horses and they have all this. You only have a handful of horses and a handful of like people with armor, right? So I mean, on the way there, of course, there's a blind man. He was blind, and when he found out that the Prophet was marching with the Muslimin through his van to get to where they wanted to go, he actually started throwing rocks and stuff. And the people were going to start going to him. And the Prophet said in his wisdom, just paraphrasing, he said, "Look, his heart is blind and his eyes are blind. Yeah, just leave him alone." So now we're going to go to the preparations to the battle, right? We have marched to the battle. Now we're going to prepare. So the Prophet he was organizing his army, right? He was assessing each fighter individually. He was going one by one, saying, okay, this person's like this, he can do this. This person's an archer, he can be over here as an archer. This person has expertise in this, he can do this. And there are a lot of kids actually who wanted to fight, and they were dismissed because they were too young, except for two exceptions, of course, which if we had more time, I'd get into them. But essentially, there was two children who were one was 14 years old, and another one was about the same age. And essentially, the 14-year-old was an expert archer, so he said, okay, sure. His parents argued for him. He said, okay, sure. And I wish I could show you what it looks like. I don't know if this. This is the mountain, Jabal Uhud, right? The Muslim camp is here, and then the Quraishi camp is here, and then we have a mountain here. What's this mountain for?
The archers.
The archers. So I wish I could. I should have printed it out.
I can send it to the Dawah Target chat.
You can send it to the chat. Inshallah. I'll also try to maybe include it in the video. But essentially, we have a little mountain here separated from the main mountain where the archers were situated. We had about 40 archers, I believe. Or we have 50 archers, yeah. So 50 of the best archers remained as like on this hill at all costs. The Prophet ﷺ said, look, we're going to be here on the mountain. We need 50 of you archers to stay on this mountain, and no matter what, until I send for you, do not leave this mountain. And I'm sure all of us have heard this story, a lot of us have heard this story, that they were told not to leave this mountain by the Prophet ﷺ, right? And it's not only that, but yeah, it was even said like, no matter what, nothing. Like, to protect us with your arrows, this is what the Prophet ﷺ said. Protect us with your arrows, for their horses will not charge forth if they see arrows. Even if you see the birds eating our corpses, do not leave your places until I send for you. So we have the Prophet ﷺ telling the archers, no matter what, don't leave. So what would you do if the Prophet would do this? Don't leave, right? I mean, this is Prophet, the messenger of God. He told you not to leave the mountain if you see like anything, no matter what. He even gave an example saying, right, if you see the birds eating our corpses, do not leave your place until I send for you. Now we're going to get into what happened, but they didn't. Some of them left, right? So, anyways, 15th of Shawwal, the sun rose, and the Prophet began motivating his troops, right? And essentially, we started, right? We had Abu Dujanna. He was a formidable force. He had a big reputation in the battle. He was the first one to go out. He actually had a red turban, and people called him the Turban of Death because he was a good fighter. And essentially, he went in. He did not stop until the sword is due. Like the sword went through its due right, as in like the sword was like basically unable to use its pulse. So he kept using his sword basically until it was unusable. So he was quite the warrior. Oh, very good. That's very good. And yeah, there's all kinds of things that happened even before the battle began. The Quraysh attempted to disrupt us. Right, a messenger came within a shouting distance from the Quraysh, telling the people, "Look, Medina, right? People of Medina, leave to us our cousins. We have done nothing against you." So they're basically saying, look, the people who are from Medina, you guys just leave. This does not concern you. We just want to fight our cousins, right? We want to fight the Prophet. We want to fight the people who left from Mecca, right? Hajirun. Of course, this pissed off a lot of people. This like made a lot of people really upset. The Ansar were very angry with this offer, and they hurled vulgar slurs and profanity towards him. And yeah, especially because like they were fighting for Islam. They were not fighting for anyone, right? They were not fighting for the Prophet. I mean, they were fighting for Islam in general, right, including the Prophet. They're not fighting because they wanted to just meddle into some business between tribes and all that. They had an actual reason to fight. And of course, Abu Amir, right? There's a man named Abu Amir. He was one of the foremost leader of the Us. So this big leader from Medina, basically. Before the Prophet came, he was very big and prominent, right? The Prophet came, he did not. He's like, I don't like Islam. I don't want to be here. He left and he joined. He went back to Mecca, yeah. Essentially. He could not. He left Medina in protest and waited for a moment such as this to reclaim his city. So I do not does not say Mecca actually, but he left Medina. He came back and he was on the Quraysh side, Kuffar side basically, and he said, "Look, to Abu Sufyan, the leader of the Quraysh, look, I was a prominent leader in Medina. These guys are going to listen to me, right? Leave this for me, for my people have always respected and honored me. You will see the power I hold over them." And then he goes out to the Ansar saying, "Oh, it is me, Abu Amir." And before he could continue, they yelled back, "May Allah curse you and give you no pleasure. You are not Abu Amir. You are Abu Amir al-Fasiq," which is like the dissolute. Professor, yeah. He was like taken aback. He couldn't even say anything. Like, imagine like you leave your people and then you come back and he's like, "It is I." And then they all like they're like, "May Allah curse you." Like that's crazy. He could not muster a response, right? So he went back to Abu Sufyan and said, "Look, my people are afflicted with some sort of disease," which is something that's like a repeating thing. And we see people always saying it's like a disease. They don't understand Islam. They don't understand the beauty of it. They don't understand because of how strong it is and how like good it spreads. They actually view it as a disease. So, anyways, that didn't work out, right? So then we have things are starting to begin. The ball is starting to roll, right? Of course, we have Abi Talha. He came and stepped forward and said, "Who will fight me?" and then Ali ibn Abi Talib stepped forward, and while Talha had full body armor, Ali only had a sword and a shield. So then when they approached each other, Talha immediately swung, and Ali, like, he was very smart, right? He was strong, but he was also very smart. He knew where the armor was, so he was able to cut his enemy right below his thigh, slicing off his leg completely. Right, it's like really good battle stuff going on. Uh, then he fell backwards, and his private parts were exposed, and he pleaded, "I beg you by the rights of kinship." And Ali felt embarrassed to attack an exposed man, and appealing to family ties, so he lowered his sword and he walked back. So we have someone he attacked. He basically said, like, retreating. He's like, "No, don't do anything." And then Ali, khalas, he didn't kill him. He could have easily killed him. And this is a big theme in Islamic battle, right? When we see in Islam, when we have these fights in Islam, you always see this repeating war, which we a theme in war, which we are taught is if someone retreats, you do not fight them, right? If you're fighting someone right now and he backs out, he's like, "Khalas, I give up." You don't go after him. In Islam, we're taught these people when they're weak, when they're retreating, when they're khalas, let them go. And that is aside the point, because both ways he ended up passing away from the injuries. He did not survive the battle, but this is showing honor for Ali, and also like Islam, right? It's something that we're taught in Islam. It's an honorable thing, just to leave your enemy when he gives up. So after Ali's victory, the Muslims started to charge, and then of course the way we had, I wish the map was had like a big map, but essentially the way we had it is it was a small area. I think it was 300 meters or so, where the Quraysh could enter. So that meant the whole 3,000 people army could not fit in this small thing. So it kind of neutralized the disadvantage of the number. So basically, only people who could fit through this area could fight us. So that was something that was easy for us. That kind of got rid of that advantage they had in number, and they went in and they started fighting. Right now, there's one person that the Prophet actually killed, and I believe this is the only person that the Prophet actually personally killed. Let me just double check. It's the only pagan that the Prophet personally killed. Does anybody know what his name was? The only person that the Prophet actually personally killed, who was a pagan? No? Well, his name is Umayyah ibn Khalaf. And in Mecca, he said what? He taunted the Prophet and said, "I am going to kill you one day." And on another occasion, he also said, "I have a special horse which I feed the choicest of barley and grain so that it grows to be strong, so I can kill you while I ride it." And actually, one time the Prophet actually said, "No, rather, I will kill you by the will of Allah." So on the day of Uhud, guess who was there? Both of them, right? They were both there. And he saw the Prophet, and he started charging towards him while he was on that same horse he was talking about. So he trained this horse to get big and strong. And he got on this horse, he tried to attack the Prophet. And the companions huddled around the Prophet to protect him. The Prophet said, "No, he is mine." He grabbed the spear and he launched forward and he dodged the sword of this enemy, and he thrusted the spear into his neck. And this didn't even kill him, right? It didn't kill him because his armor softened the blow, but it injured him to the extent that he started screaming. And then he rushed back to the Quraysh, tried to assure him that it's just a minor wound. It's it's gonna heal. But he knew because the Prophet said that I will kill you one day by the will of Allah. He knew that it was game over, and it's true. The Prophet's vow was true. He started to panic. He continued to panic, and indeed he died before they even reached Mecca. So I mean that's subhanallah, right? That by itself is something that's crazy. Let's see what we're doing on time. Okay, I have to. I'm not going to be able to finish all the content, so Mehdi's going to be able to continue it. But I'll just finish this section, inshallah. So they died before they reached Mecca. This enemy, right? And the Prophet once stated, Allah's anger is intensified against anyone whom the Messenger of Allah kills in the path of Allah. So if the Messenger of Allah is killing in the path of Allah, or I'll say it one more time, the hadith. Allah's anger is intensified against anyone whom the Messenger of Allah kills in the path of Allah. So in this case, it was intensified. He died, and he knew the wound was not fatal, but he knew that it was going to kill him. He started panicking because the Prophet told him, that by Allah he would kill him. So we didn't get to the interesting part of this battle yet. This is all set up. So inshallah, Mahdi is going to continue. I think you're going to do a recording, is it? So inshallah, we're going to do a recording, but you have to watch this recording because it's very, very. This is not even the best stuff I've talked about yet. So Jazakallah khair, and inshallah, Mahdi will continue on Thursday. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Yeah, if anybody has questions, I can try to answer them. Jazakallah khair.